Speaking his mind and dividing opinion on BBC One and BBC One HD now, Fiona Bruce meets the royal birthday boy.
Tomorrow, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, will turn 90. After standing at the Queen's side for nearly 60 years, he's recognised the world over and has become the longest-serving consort in British history. But who exactly is the Duke? On the distant Pacific island of Tanna, the islanders think he's a god. A status reinforced by a series of photographs, some sent by the Duke himself. Here at home, his status is rather more down to earth. He's familiar as the man who always stands 2 steps behind the Queen, just occasionally with his foot in his mouth. But the true picture of the Duke is more interesting, more complex, and more surprising. I've been observing the Duke at various events over the last 6 months, and the mythology surrounding him is extraordinary. For a start, most people think he's Greek. He's not. Most people think his life is limited to shaking hands on official visits. It isn't. Most people think he's irascible, with an unfortunate tendency to say the wrong thing. Well, maybe some of that's true. But one thing's certain, he doesn't suffer fools gladly, and he has a fearsome reputation when it comes to interviews. I'm on my way now to talk to him about his life and career. And I must admit, I'm feeling a little bit terrified.
Well, he's formidable. He's daunting because, partly because of his position, but also because he is a very considerable intellect. The first time I met him, it was absolutely clear that if you turned up and you hadn't mastered the papers, he would detect it very quickly, and you would be in trouble.
Get him on a bad day, and it's quite hard work. Get him on a good day, and you really don't want to be with anybody else. I hope you have a good day.
I mean, my father, purely and simply, is very modest about himself and doesn't believe in talking about himself. One of the best piece of advice he gives to everybody is talk about everything else. Don't talk about yourself. Nobody's interested in you.
Meeting him is rather extraordinary because you get the impression of meeting a bird of prey, a hawk or an eagle. There's something absolutely penetrating about the eyes. You feel you're being sort of scanned. You raise your game. You rather hope he'll like you.
What I really want to know is whether these perceptions of the Duke are in any way accurate. The Duke of Edinburgh has been seen in many roles. He was the dashing naval officer who wooed a princess, the moderniser at the heart of the 20th century monarchy, the man who created the Duke of Edinburgh's award, and the champion of the early environmental movement.
Represent Fiona Bruce.
But as the Duke approaches his milestone birthday, what intrigues me is how he shows so little sign of slowing down, still a force of nature.
You're 90 this year. Do you?
Well done.
I know. I've managed to do my maths. Could you say there are any things that, above all the things you've done, that you are particularly proud of or that you would like people to think of as your greatest achievements?
No, that's asking too much.
But the role that you have to extent carved out for yourself, I think the perception is that you've made a huge success of it. I mean...
Splendid, if that's what you think.
Is that what you think?
I couldn't care less. I mean, who cares what I think about it? It was ridiculous.
But of course we
No,
care.
it isn't.
There must be few figures in the public eye who are as reluctant as the Duke to trumpet their own achievements. Modest and to the point, this bird of prey is always alert to what's going on around him.
The Queen and the Duke certainly do seem particularly at ease here. It was the Duke himself who decided that they should spend the actual day of their anniversary on Malta for this very private of public couples. Quite a romantic gesture.
Finish?
How are you, sir? Are you well, sir?
Well, do I look ill?
That rather bittersweet relationship with the media has become familiar, almost a caricature. And yet there was a time when he embraced the power of television with open arms. In the 50s and 60s, he was a pioneer in the new era of mass communication, pushing a slightly dusty monarchy into the modern age. In 1955, an informal Duke was filmed playing Sorcerer's Apprentice with Tommy Cooper at the Variety Club. He went on to become the first member of the royal family to give a TV interview.
What you're really out to do is to change your way of thinking with this week.
We know perfectly well that the people in this country have got a remarkable talent for things if they learn how to do them.
And in 1957, the first to present his own television show.
40 minutes to get round the world. Well, it's going to be a bit of a rush. It may leave you a little bit muddled, but I don't think it matters very much.
In this programme, the Duke discussed the highlights of his recent world tour.
It's a dried one. This is the nut, so to speak, rather like a dried coconut. A very peculiar shape, as you can see. And, of course, people think that's the forbidden fruit. I tasted one rather like that. It's a sort of jelly inside, and I can tell you it's not, they're not surprised it's forbidden.
Later that year, he was asked to present a rather more scientific film on the geophysics of the planet. It was called The Restless Sphere.
And now to the most important of all, the atmosphere and the sun. And this inner ring here shows the upper limit of our weather and the clouds. And now to the most...
I was the anchorman through the thing, which was fascinating. And I had to introduce each little section. I did brilliant. It was the hottest day of the year. And I managed to get out of the studio while the bits in between were going on to cool down, came back, turned over 2 pages of the script, left somebody out who was at the top of Mont Blanc waiting to be introduced, which was a bit awkward.
I suspect, people's memories are short, and I suspect many people now will either not know because they'll be too young, or they may not remember that you did that kind of thing, that you did a press conference, that you did that television program, because I can't imagine you wanting to do anything like that now, or even in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
What's changed?
I didn't want to do this either.
You didn't want to do this interview?
No.
So what made
Since you ask.
What made you say yes?
Well, I don't know. It was. I don't know. It was part of the business. I suppose there was an inevitability about it.
Following his early forays into television in the 1950s, the Duke saw the potential of using this modern means of communication. In 1968, his cousin-in-law, Lord Brabourne, a television producer himself, proposed a documentary which would show the royal family as it had never been seen before.
My husband, John Brabourne, was certainly very enthusiastic at the idea of being able to show the royal family as being natural and normal and doing a lot of things that everybody else in the country does, as ordinary people, as Mr. and Mrs., and not King and Queen and Prince Philip.
Prince Philip agreed, and a film simply entitled Royal Family was made, broadcast on the 21st of June 1969.
It was very much his idea. I think at the time he was trying to puncture the mystique and the subservient nonsense that surrounded the royal family and to say, look, we're a family, you know, with all the strengths and weaknesses of a family, and we're a modern family, which they were in the 60s in that sense.
He did have some very strange habits, your father. I remember when I used to come up to Royal Lodge, I asked when I arrived one day, I said, where's the king? And they said, oh, he's in the garden. And I went out and there's nothing to be seen except a lot of terribly rude words and language coming out of a rhododendron bush. So I eventually found him there, hacking away, wearing a bearskin cap, which was, you know, he was getting ready. Yeah.
Although overall control was in the hands of the palace, some insiders were said to have considerable reservations, as did the then head of BBC Two, David Attenborough.
The whole concept of royalty is a mysterious one and not a logical one. It depends on the proposition that the monarch is different from us. Now, if you then say, no, they're exactly like everybody else, they fry sausages and they get up in the morning and they're occasionally bad-tempered and do all the sort of things that the rest of us do, for the moment there's a frisson. Everybody says, oh, good Lord, he's holding a frying pan. How astounding.
The salad is ready.
Good. But in the end, if you're not very careful, you diminish the stature of royalty. I think the fact that it probably was a division amongst the royal family as to whether it was good or bad is an indication of the fact that you were on a very sharp knife edge.
Yeah, that's all fine. What do you mean to do that, then?
Come around this side.
Did you think it was a good idea once it had gone out? Were you pleased with it?
Well, yes, it went down quite well. I mean, I think it's achieved a sort of curious status now, which it never had at the time.
Well, there's a certain mythology about it, I think. Some people have felt that it rather opened the sort of door to the press in terms of...
We don't belong to a secret society. I mean, I don't see why people shouldn't know what's going on.
But presumably...
It's much better that they should know than speculate.
But presumably there also has to be a limit as well, as to how intrusive...
Well, yes, we didn't invite them into the bathroom. I mean, people have judgment.
Do you think it's become too intrusive now, though, the media interest in yourself, in the royal family?
It's natural. I mean, yes, I mean, media is a professional intruder. I mean, it wouldn't work if it did. That's what it's doing all the time. So you can't complain about it.
Evidently, the Duke is a man who just gets on with life, rather than making a fuss. His enthusiasm for the royal family film was the mark of a modernizer, very much at odds with his public image today. Whatever effect the film may have had later in encouraging the public's curiosity with the royal family, his daring venture was a huge success, seen by a worldwide audience of 350 million people. But its cosy portrait of family life was about as far as you can get from the Duke's own formative years. Prince Philippos Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glücksburg was born on the kitchen table on the 10th of June, 1921, on the Mediterranean island of Corfu.
How would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm Greek. Well, I was born Greek national, but I was Danish by race.
And how do you think of yourself now?
I don't. I'm just here.
The Greek royal family were not Greek. They'd been imported from Denmark in the 19th century, and their reign was a troubled one. In 1922, just over a year after Philip was born, his father, Prince Andrew, was arrested by the Greek military government. He was charged with treason and narrowly escaped the firing squad. He and his family were then exiled. Philip spent his childhood living in France, in England, and in Germany.
Where did you call home when you were growing up?
Wherever I happened to be. I had a very extended family. I mean, you say I went to all these places. It was always with family.
Did it never feel unsettling, the fact that you were moving around so much?
Well, I just lived my life. I mean, I haven't been trying to psychoanalyze myself all the time.
By the early 1930s, Philip's parents' marriage had broken down. His mother retreated to a sanatorium in Switzerland, while his father moved away to a small flat in Monte Carlo. Philip was to have only sporadic contact with either for the rest of his childhood. And as if that was not enough, Philip's 4 sisters then all married within just 9 months of each other and moved to Germany. Aged just 10 years old, Prince Philip was separated from every member of his immediate family.
What's your memory of that time? Was that difficult?
I came here and I went to school here, and my grandmother lived here, so I was in with the family. It was no great deal.
I mean, some people might.
Well, some people might. I'm telling you what I felt.
I think one of the reasons that Prince Philip won't talk about his childhood is that he spent a lifetime actually blocking it out. He lost literally everybody. He therefore became very self-reliant. He keeps himself to himself. He protects himself. He simply says, what's there to complain about? You know, these things happen.
In 1934, Prince Philip, aged 13, went to Gordonston School in Scotland. The school was founded by the German Jewish refugee, Kurt Hahn.
He was a remarkable character, yeah. He was vaguely eccentric, I suppose, but he was absolute genius with people. And he had, he had the extraordinary ability to comprehend teenagers better than they did themselves, I think.
Hahn had progressive ideas on education, believing in the power of the great outdoors, in fitness, self-discipline, and service to the community. These principles were to be hugely influential on Prince Philip throughout his life.
My old headmaster, Hahn, said, "My boy, I want you to run an award scheme." And I said, "Well, yes, sir, but you know, I can't do it by myself." And so I said, "If you get a committee of the great and the good together, I'll chair it, if you like." So that's what happened.
The Duke of Edinburgh's Award, or D of E, was launched in 1956 and based on Kurt Hahn's philosophy.
To give young people a chance to discover their own abilities for themselves as an introduction to the responsibilities and interests of the grown-up world, and incidentally, to make new friends and have a great deal of fun and satisfaction in the process.
Even today, he is as dedicated as ever to the D of E, visiting young people all over the country.
Trying this thing.
Yeah.
Have you done anything else?
I helped out in my swimming club.
Oh, no one drowned?
Pardon?
No one drowned?
No, no one drowned. Right?
Oh, good. They're invited to choose things which they probably haven't done before. Believe it. They set their own program, and I think that in some way encourages them to go on with it because they're challenging themselves. They're not doing it at somebody else's behest. And they choose the things they want to do, and very often they're things which they think might interest them, but nearly always it's a new experience.
Three years ago, a prisoner at Reading Young Offenders Institution, John Watts, was offered the chance to change his life when he was invited to take part in the D of E.
When I was at school, I'd heard about the D of E, but my perception was that it wasn't for people like me. It was for a higher class of people. And all I knew about the Duke of Edinburgh before I was in prison was that he was married to the Queen, and he was famous for saying rude things to a lot of foreign people.
But in spite of John's early impression of the Duke and his award, he has, while in prison, completed the Bronze, Silver and Gold awards.
What John has done whilst in custody is truly remarkable. he is an inspiration, not just to his peers, fellow young offenders, but to staff. You know, for somebody to actually do the full set, the bronze, the silver, and the gold, whilst in custody, it hasn't been done before.
Back in April, a few weeks before his release from prison, John received his Gold Award at a presentation ceremony at St James's Palace in London. While there, he met the Duke, who asked him about his community service.
What do you do for your service?
My service, I work alongside the Samaritans.
Samaritans? Oh. You didn't try committing suicide?
I didn't know. It turns out the Duke of Edinburgh is a real inspiration. It's because of him that I am able to change my life. People say to me that your life in prison is lost. However, if I can come out of prison with a DV Gold Award, I can show them that and say it's not lost.
You all do your exposition in this...
I think that he goes on being amazed by the numbers of young people that want to do it. The DV has continued to grow, and that there are young people coming in from all sorts of different backgrounds now that perhaps would never have been possible when it started.
What did you do?
I was the mentor for the younger pupils in the school.
All right.
Yeah.
Led them astray, is it?
Not quite.
Are you proud of the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme and the numbers of people that have gone through it and what it's achieved?
I've got no reason to be proud of it. I mean, I think it's satisfying that we set up a formula that works. Yes, I mean, that's it.
Why do you say there's no reason to be proud of it?
Well, I did run it. I mean, I'm saying it's all fairly second-hand, the whole business. I mean, I eventually got landed with the responsibility or the credit for it, but...
And of course it has your name.
Well, that was strictly against my better judgment. I tried to avoid it, but I was eventually overridden.
There are hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives have been turned around. I think that this is one of the greatest achievements of his life, you know, to set up the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, because this sort of set a benchmark. This is a real gift to the nation.
If the D.A.V. is the Duke's greatest achievement, it was probably his time on the high seas that made him the man he is today. In 1939, Prince Philip arrived at Dartmouth Naval College, set on a career in the Royal Navy.
We're all the sum of our past. I mean, Prince Philip reflects his childhood, his upbringing, but most of all, I think, at the heart of Prince Philip is his time in the Navy. From the age of 18, he was a professional sailor.
While at Dartmouth, Philip was also to meet his future wife. In July 1939, the King and Queen visited the college with their 2 daughters. Philip was chosen as the young princess's escort. Princess Elizabeth, then only 13 years old, was said to have taken an immediate shine to the handsome prince.
Well, I think it was love at first sight, according to her. And she told her father's authorized biographer that he was allowed to say so. So that must be so. Although it wasn't the first time that they'd seen each other, because Prince Philip used to go and stay with his aunt, the Duchess of Kent, and so they would be at, parties. But I think that was the first time she really thought, goodness, what I really am mad about this man.
2 months later came the outbreak of the Second World War, and soon after, Prince Philip entered active service. In March 1941, aboard HMS Valiant, he saw action off the Greek coastline in the Battle of Matapan.
An early indication that Prince Philip had something about him, of course, came during the Battle of Matapan, which was a famous night action during which three Italian heavy cruisers were sunk. And a night action with gunnery is all pretty close.
There were some cruisers coming down the battleship, and there was a tremendous amount of toing and froing, and eventually the battle fleet, or the Mediterranean fleet under Admiral Cunningham, set off, and we managed to catch the 3 Italian cruisers coming south in the middle of the night, and they were quite unaware we were there, and the battleships opened fire and blew them out. Well, made an awful mess of them, that's for sure.
He was mentioned in dispatches by the Commander-in-Chief. He would say, anyone would have done that, I'm sure, but he was a man on the day, and it was a noteworthy action and therefore was recorded.
In 1945, with the war now over, the 24-year-old Prince Philip returned to Britain, every bit the dashing naval officer. Something not lost on the young Princess Elizabeth. In 1946, at the wedding of the daughter of his uncle, Lord Mountbatten, rumours began to spread of a royal romance.
At my wedding, the 2 princesses were bridesmaids, and there was a picture taken going into the church, and it was quite a cool day, and the princess and the others all had wraps on. Prince Philip was one of the ushers, and a photograph was taken of her handing her wrap to him to take, which seemed a perfectly normal thing to do. But somehow or other, somewhere, somebody said, aha, what does this mean?
Unbeknown to most of the wedding guests, Philip was already privately engaged to his princess, with the official announcement coming in July 1947. In preparation for his new life, Philip also renounced his Greek and Danish royal titles and became a British subject, adopting the surname Mountbatten. But to some, Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten remained not quite one of us.
There is certainly a sense that he was not considered to be quite kosher. You know, he was from the sort of slightly disreputable royal wing, from a country that had gone republic and all the rest of it, and a troubled family. He was the first person to really come in from the outside world since Prince Albert, so a good 100 years had passed.
You came in as an outsider, to a certain extent.
Well, rather less an outsider than some. I mean, my father was King George V's first cousin. I came to the Duchess of Kent's wedding here. I met the Queen when she was 12 or something. Not quite such an outsider as you might think.
The day of the wedding and immense crowds. Thousands had assembled overnight, others had arrived at dawn, all eagerly waiting to see and to cheer the royal processions on this day of their own princess's marriage.
On November the 20th, 1947, in Westminster Abbey, Philip Mountbatten married our future Queen. That morning, he was given a new title by his father-in-law, King George VI. He was now His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. But more importantly, perhaps, marriage brought Philip a sense of real family life and stability that had been lacking in his life since he was a 10-year-old boy.
Marrying the princess gave Prince Philip a centre and a feeling of security, since he'd not had really much of a home in his youth and childhood.
He was particularly happy when they were first married. It was a sort of real family life, and he was always allowed to wear the trousers. And what he wanted, went.
1 year later, Prince Philip became a father with the birth of Prince Charles.
Now the Duke of Edinburgh takes a fatherly hand, his technique being no better and no worse than most fathers. A slight remonstrance from Princess Elizabeth, but not, I think, a real protest.
By the standards of the time, Prince Philip was very much a hands-on father. You know, hands and knees, playing with the children. But then also first-hand accounts that I've been told by people who were there at the time of Prince Philip not just bathing the children, playing with the children, but reading to the children. He was a hands-on dad in the way that many fathers of that generation weren't. He was very actively involved in his children's childhood.
But Philip was often away, fulfilling his duties as a serving officer. In 1949, he was stationed in Malta, where he was joined by his young wife.
That period in Malta was probably the most special time they ever had, because they were newly married, they were a naval officer and wife living in Malta. I know people who were with them in Malta at that time. They appeared incredibly happy.
That struck me as a relatively carefree time for you both, I would presume to say.
You're obsessed with carefree, aren't
well,
you?
simply because it strikes me that your life after that has become...
It's a professional life. I was a professional naval officer.
But you weren't having to do the
I was having
level
to
of
do
duties
my
that you do
duties
now.
as a professional naval officer. Now, you probably never had a profession, so you don't know what that means.
Well, I flatter myself I have one now, but perhaps
see,
not in
right.
your view. All I mean is that the level of official functions, state visits, the kind of thing that you then took on, you weren't doing as much of it then, as I understand
No,
it.
it wasn't before, no.
It was a very different life.
Yes.
And one that you enjoyed.
Yes, I had no grumbles.
Despite the Duke's typical reticence, the Navy was undeniably important to him. It gave him a sense of authority and duty that has never left him. He rose by his own merits from a cadet to the command of a ship. But in 1951, George VI became seriously ill, diagnosed with lung cancer. He was only 55 years old. Princess Elizabeth and the Duke were now called upon to take over some of the King's official duties. The Duke's active naval career was effectively over.
There was a huge demand for visits abroad, for all sorts of things. And I think there was a general understanding that it would be more sensible if I didn't go on with the Navy.
Is it something you'd have liked to have continued?
That's hypothetical.
It is, but I'm asking the question, would you like to have
No
continued?
answer.
You must have thought about it. Let me put it another way then. Was it difficult to give up?
If I thought of it at all, I thought that I could perfectly well go on with the career. It didn't seem to, and it would have seemed to me would have been of great value to the Queen when she became Queen eventually, to have somebody who was, in a sense, professionally qualified at something and not just traipsing around.
It is with the greatest sorrow that we make the following announcement. The King passed peacefully away in his sleep earlier this morning.
When the news came through, the Duke and the Queen were in Kenya on their way to Australia for an official tour. According to the Duke's private secretary, Philip looked as if you'd dropped half the world on him. There was no chance now of him returning to the Navy.
I think the death of the king was the most appalling shock, really, for both the princess, who then became queen, and for Prince Philip. They should have had at least another 5 years, really. And it all obviously changed overnight, so I think it must have been very, very difficult for both of them.
On the 2nd of June 1953, at the Queen's coronation, the Duke of Edinburgh stepped forward and knelt in homage to his sovereign. He placed his hands between hers and said,
Philip to become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship. And faith and truth I will bear unto you, to live and die against all manner of folk, so help me God.
The Queen's accession to the throne was a turning point in the Duke's life. He was no longer his wife's equal. He was now her subject.
I think the first year for him, after the Queen became Queen, must have been very difficult. When the state opening of Parliament, your chair is lower than the Queen's. You're very much pushed into the background.
Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
And while the Queen has access to state papers and a weekly meeting with the Prime Minister of the day, the Duke has no such role. Instead, he was given non-constitutional duties, the job of overseeing the royal estates and of running the family.
Something key to remember about Prince Philip is that his life has been almost unique. Women are accustomed to their lives being defined by the man they married. Men of Prince Philip's generation are not accustomed to having their lives defined by their wives.
Recognizing the need to establish a firm position for the Duke, the Queen announced that the Duke was to have place, preeminence, and precedence next to her on all occasions and in all meetings, except where otherwise provided by Act of Parliament.
The other thing you've talked about is the kind of division of labour between yourself and the Queen. And, you know, that you've said in the past you think you've achieved a sort of reasonable double act. What did you mean by that? How does that work?
Well, she has a constitutional role and has constitutional responsibilities, which I don't. Where we join up is when she goes on visits, which are not constitutional. So that works out very well.
What was more difficult for the Duke to establish was what exactly was his role when he was away from the Queen.
The problem was, of course, to recognize, if you know what I mean, what the niche was and to try and grow into it. And that was by trial and error. And, there was no precedent. But if I asked somebody what you expect me to do, they all looked blank. They had no idea. Nobody had much idea.
So not very helpful then?
Well, it wasn't they weren't helpful, but I mean, nobody really thought about it. And so it was really eventually trial and error.
And how did you go about finding that niche?
Well, various people suggested things. I know that it was suggested I should take on some sort of charity. And my uncle, Lord Mountbatten, persuaded me to... He followed my father-in-law as president of the National Playing Fields Association. And he suggested I should take that on because it would have given me some connection with sort of recreational life in the country. And it turned out to be very valuable.
What do you boys want?
We want to see the boss.
Well, I'm afraid he's very busy.
It's very important. We want to see the boss. Please tell me, Steve.
What do you want to see me about?
Because you won't play, Phil.
Well, you've come to the right place.
The Playing Fields Association was a huge success and one of the first of over 800 different organisations that came knocking at the Duke's door.
And when you talk about, you know, finding a niche, how did you set about doing that?
Wait for invitations.
Is that right?
Roughly, yes.
So it was
because
more...
one thing after another, people started saying, will you come do this, will you come do that? And that accumulated and snowballed. I mean, you wouldn't believe it.
Alongside the Duke of Edinburgh's award, the project that has given the Duke the biggest international profile is the conservation of the natural world.
His importance to conservation worldwide has been absolutely huge. You can go anywhere in the world, you know, and he will know where you have to make the connection, where you have to put the pressure, what you have to do. And he's very practical in those terms.
50 years ago, the Duke was asked to be the first UK president of the World Wildlife Fund. And then 20 years later, he became the organisation's international president.
He wasn't asked because he was the Duke of Edinburgh. He was asked because he was the best person in the world to become the president, and we were very ambitious. He was much more than a figurehead of WWF because he would look at programs both for fundraising and conservation. He went on many tours, different parts of the world, to promote conservation, went into the field, met the workers there, met the local government officials. He was just amazing.
If we've got this extraordinary diversity on this globe, it seems awfully silly for us to destroy it, because they seem, all these other creatures have an equal right to exist here. We have no prior rights to the earth than anybody else. And if they're here, let's give them a chance to survive.
Would you describe yourself as a green? As green?
No. No.
Why not?
Well, because I think that there's a difference between being concerned for the conservation of nature and being a bunny hugger.
A bunny hugger, is that? What do you mean by that?
Well, can't you imagine?
I can, but it's not a term I've heard before, I must say.
Well, people who simply love animals.
What, in a sort of sentimental way?
Yes, well, most people are concerned. I mean, when I was president of WWF, I of more letters about people, the way animals were treated in zoos, than about any concern for the survival of a species. People can't get their heads around the idea of a species surviving. You know, they're more concerned about how you treat a donkey in Sicily or something.
In 1986, the Duke combined his practical and unsentimental approach to conservation with a long-standing interest in religion and its effects on the world.
We asked leaders of the main faiths to discuss among themselves what their attitude was to the natural creation or to the natural environment. And with a view to, if they then thought that they had any responsibility for it, to try and disseminate that within their communities.
The Duke's initiative was welcomed, and in 1995 an organisation called ARC, or the Alliance of Religions and Conservation, was launched.
Prince Philip had the vision to see this could go much bigger, and that it could actually become one of the most powerful forces in the whole conservation movement. The fact that the major faiths own about 8% of the habitable surface of the planet. They either run or contribute to over 50% of all schools worldwide, and they're trusted. In many countries in the world, nobody trusts the government, nobody trusts international agencies. They do trust their faiths. And the religious environmental organizations are the fastest growing environmental organizations in the world.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because if where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Can't you guess?
Well, it could be on a spectrum from mass sterilisation to you know, greater availability of contraception. I don't know what your views are as to what can be done about it.
Well, I think it might be described as a voluntary family limitation.
As we know, he always speaks his mind. Sometimes, not necessarily with a high degree of tact, but on the other hand, I think that people have come to expect that of him, and they really rather enjoy it. And they think how nice to hear somebody actually say what they think.
For decades, often trying to lighten the atmosphere, the Duke has come up with off-the-cuff remarks that have been lapped up by the world's press. Now, he's a man known for his plain speaking, and on his trip to Australia, the Duke of Edinburgh hasn't disappointed. He caused something of furore when he asked a group of Aboriginal dancers if they still threw their spears at each other.
During a visit to the new Welsh Assembly in May, he met a group from the British Deaf Association standing by a Caribbean band. Deaf, if you're near there, no wonder you're deaf, he reportedly told them.
Annoyingly for the Duke, his often rather light-hearted approach is sometimes misunderstood, with many of his comments seized upon by journalists waiting, notebook or camera to hand.
Do you feel that the press has been unfair to you? Has given you a bit of a hard time? Misrepresented you?
I suppose, yes, occasionally, but I think that it has its own agenda, and that's it. You just have to live with it.
But it must frustrate you. I mean, you certainly, you've said before that there are things you might have got involved in or wanted to do, and, you know, the press would kind of ruin it.
Well, if you're standing on a railway line and express trains coming down, the sensible thing is to get out of the way, isn't it? Yes.
But that's not always been easy for the Duke. In 1986, on a tour of China, he was talking to a group of British students off the record and quipped that if they stayed in China much longer, they'd come back with slitty eyes.
This thing keeps coming up about, oh, yes, Prince Philip, he says this, you know, he says about people having slitty eyes or whatever it is. Is that fair, or do you think, to some extent, you're the author of your own misfortune?
Who reported it?
Well, of course, it was reported in the press. But
By whom?
By newspapers.
With who?
With
the Times correspondent.
Right.
Called Mr. Hamilton. But for him, it wouldn't have come out.
But do you think... I mean, there are two ways of looking at that. You could say, for heaven's sake, he was making a joke, lightening the atmosphere, what's the problem? Or you could say, oh, I think it was a bit un-PC, maybe you shouldn't have said that.
It had no effect in China, if that's what you're worried about.
Well, I'm not worried about it at all, but I wondered what you felt about it.
I've forgotten about it.
It was meant to be funny. And in the time of when it was made, I'm willing to bet you they all started laughing. But what happened was the media picked it up, it was taken out of context. Now, you could easily say, well, a man of his stature and his exposure to the media should be aware of the... Well, I mean, so what? I mean, the fact is that he's bigger than all of those things.
Nowhere has the press been more invasive than in its examination of royal relationships. But throughout it all, and usually behind the scenes, those close to him say that the Duke has acted as patriarch, providing support and advice for a family sometimes under fire.
I think what he is very good at is recognising the extraordinary strains that the royal family are under and that they put the young ones under. I think first and foremost, he will give a pillar to lean on in terms of what is right and what is appropriate and how to deal with some of the real strains and stresses. I think also he is, in his own way, very affectionate. So I think that quietly, privately, he will be a tremendous support.
And yet there have been internal stresses. For years there's been a perception that the Duke and his eldest son have not always seen eye to eye.
I think from Prince Charles's side there is a hesitation about his father. His father is quite a strong authoritarian figure, there's no question about that. And I think that there is a real difference of personality there. In terms of basic affection, no, I think that's strong. But I think in terms of a sense of respecting each other's spaces and sometimes avoiding each other's spaces, that's there as well.
When it came to the royal family's most traumatic event in recent history, the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, the Duke provided much-needed support to his son's family.
The plan was that Diana's boys would walk behind the coffin with Charles Spencer. There was no plan for the Duke of Edinburgh to do so. But Prince William wasn't sure, he was a young boy, that he was comfortable with doing that. But Prince Philip encouraged him. He said, I think, you know, in years to come, you will be pleased that you did walk behind your mother's coffin. And still, Prince William persisted in not being sure about it. And Prince Philip said, well, if I walk too, will that help?
There is a very touching moment. If you look at the film, there's a moment where they go through an arch in a Horse Guards parade, and when they, for a brief moment, are not fully visible to the crowd. And at that moment, Prince Philip leant forward and touched the boys to reassure them, to strengthen them at that moment. I think you saw him at his best at that moment. That was him being the father of the family, holding them and supporting them.
Through several periods of instability in the monarchy in recent times, one thing has remained rock solid: the Duke's marriage to the Queen.
I would never dream of commenting on anybody else's marriage. But I have seen them in a boat. I've seen them on flight decks together. I've seen them on those quiet moments, the rest periods in the middle of an engagement. They pull each other's leg. They tell each other off. You know, they just look a regular couple who clearly know each other terribly well.
A few years ago, I attended the Royal Variety performance with the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. And during the interval, we went into one of the reception areas where the Queen, being the Queen, was the center of attention. And when the Queen is the center of attention, Prince Philip keeps out of the way. He ensures that people can see the Queen. And I stood with Prince Philip at the edge of this room, and he had a glass in his hand. And the Queen was there, surrounded by a whole crowd of sort of show business personalities. And I noticed across the crowded room that she looked up and caught his eye. And as he caught her eye, he simply raised his glass to her. And I thought, yeah, something's been going on here for 60 years that we probably can't get at.
Seems all right. It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going on.
Rare.
When you were thinking about your role, you're still your first duty, first and foremost, to support the Queen.
Yes.
That's the right way to describe it? And what does that involve?
Helping her, I mean, supporting her, doing anything that is valuable to her.
In 1997, the Queen herself acknowledged the support the Duke had provided over their lifetime.
All too often, I fear, Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. Frequently, we have discussed my intended speech beforehand, and as you will imagine, his views have been expressed in a forthright manner. He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
Together, the Queen and the Duke have undertaken many thousands of engagements within the United Kingdom and overseas. So far, they've completed over 300 visits to every corner of the globe. But there is a sense that at the age of 90, he might like to relinquish some of his official duties.
I reckon I've done my bit. I want to enjoy myself for a bit now. With less responsibility, less frantic rushing about, less preparation, less trying to think of something to say. And on top of that, memories going. I can't remember names and things. Yes, I'm just sort of winding down.
Are you?
Yes.
Taking on less duties, that kind of thing?
I'm not taking on less. I'm getting rid of things.
Quite consciously, quite deliberately, he is getting rid of a lot of his patronages, He is giving up the Chancellorship of Cambridge and of Edinburgh, two major universities, and of a number of other charities that have taken up quite a lot of his time. A recognition that, quite frankly, the time's come. And it's being done in an ordered fashion so that succession can be properly thought through and his departure can be properly managed.
And yet, in 2011, the Duke shows little sign that he's letting up. In the spring, the Duke was at Westminster Abbey, reading the lesson at the Maundy service.
Then the righteous will reply, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and fed you, or thirsty and gave you drink, a stranger and took you home, or naked and clothed you? When did we see you ill or in prison and came to visit you? And the king will answer, I tell you this, anything you did for one of my brothers here, however humble, you did for me.
A week later, he was celebrating his grandson's wedding. Then came the historic visit to Ireland with the Queen. Straight after, the Queen and the Duke welcomed President Obama and his wife to Buckingham Palace.
He keeps on saying he's trying to slow down and take on less, but I haven't I haven't seen much evidence of that. He seems to fill the gaps with lots of other things, which is fantastic. And the fact that he's still got that fascination, interest, and energy is superb.
I followed your schedule a little bit. It strikes me you do an awful lot, but that's what you're beginning to now.
Well, you should have been around a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't think you don't really want nonagenarians as heads of organizations, which are trying to do something useful. There is an ageism in this country, everywhere, and quite rightly too, because I think you go downhill physically, mentally, and everything.
But I don't think any of the charities that I've spoken to that have your involvement would ever describe you as past your sell-by date.
No, but it's better to get out before you reach the sell-by date.
After months of trying to work out who the Duke actually is, and then interviewing him, not an entirely easy ride, may I say, I can understand why people see him in turns as reactionary, modern, charming, bad-tempered, thoughtful, funny, and more than a little impatient. But he is not a man who is going to dwell on these apparent contradictions. It seems to me from an early age the Duke learned the vital skill of self-reliance and the ability to just get on with the job in hand. Asking him to talk about himself is like a red rag to a bull. He represents a generation almost gone now, which doesn't moan about what might have been, but concentrates on what can be done now. And despite all he's achieved, he is, I think, genuinely bewildered by all the interest in him. I'm 90, he says. So what?